Okay, so, all right, welcome to the Digital Insurance Pint podcast. I'm your host, Tom Reid, president of GR Consulting. I'm joined again by Adam Mitchell, president of Mitchell and Earle, Steve Earle, president of Cheap Insurance, and Jeff Roy, president of Excalibur Insurance. Today's episode is talking about the COVID required shift to working from home. We're looking for the perspective of our three panelists here and some other stories. So guys, Canada had its first COVID case January 25th, right? So that was sort of the first instance of COVID affecting this country. The World Health Organization declared a global pandemic on March 11th. And then specifically in Ontario, the government of Ontario declared an emergency situation on March the 7th. So just relative to those dates, when did you guys start preparing to go remote? Right, so maybe Jeff, I'll get you to go first.
Yeah, we were monitoring the situation like the rest of the world and watched as the dominoes started falling from China all the way over to Canada, started getting more and more into it at that point. We noticed there was a big shift about March 5th. Our management team met and started going through scenarios, realizing that things could escalate a lot more. And so we started making plans on March 5th. And then I decided to go on holidays on March 12th and left for Mexico. There was 10 cases in Mexico. Our government said, hey, it's fine to travel. And all of a sudden on the following Monday, I left on March 12th. 3 or 4 days later, Trudeau has us coming home, and I'm in a foreign country and I have to figure out, actually execute our plan. So we actually went into hyper execution mode at that point and shut the doors and started moving people home. Then we were an essential service in rural Ontario, so we kept staff in our buildings. We didn't shut completely down. Some of the other offices may have had a different stance, but that's kind of the chain of events, and we started shipping people home then and figuring it out.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And it's could have been worse. You could have been on a cruise ship on March the 15th.
For sure.
All right, Steve, let's go to the other end of the country here. When did you guys decide to, when did you start planning to go remote?
Well, for Cheap Insurance, we didn't do a thing. Everybody already worked from home. Everything was already 100% digital. All communications are digital. The biggest challenge at Cheap we had was who's going to go to the mailbox? That's it. That's the only question that came up with COVID. Oh. The traditional shop, different story. Sort of the same thing as Jeff. We kind of didn't take it all that seriously until probably the middle of the week, like the 11th, 12th. We're just kind of toying with the idea of what to do. But by Friday, we decided we were shutting her down on Monday, the 16th, and nobody came in, and we came up with a work from home plan and duct tapes and Band-Aids and everything on the technology to get everybody home really quick. The phone system was a big challenge. How to work from cell phones and your staff, because we didn't have the technology. Our phone system is about 10 years old. It was on the agenda to update, like a number of people I've talked to, and we hadn't done it yet. So it didn't have the full functionality that we would like to have seen. That was the biggest challenge, was the telephone and the calls. And we did not know the wave of calls that were freaking coming our way.
Awesome. We'll get into that a bit later. Let's go over to Adam here. Adam, so we've heard, Jeff, essential service, stayed in the office for, until they weren't allowed to, and, Cheap was able to essentially just turn the page without having any sort of disruption at all. Where do you fall on that spectrum, Adam?
Yeah, in the middle. So we moved a little earlier, and in the first week of March, we were starting to meet and whiteboard with leadership, and we were trying to get an idea for what were the triggers of the events going to be, what would happen if this happened, then what would lock down and where people would go. And I think we were still trying to get a feel for how serious this thing was. But by the Monday, second week into March, I remember texting Jeff when he was on vacation. He was trying to figure out what our plan was, and we were mid sending everybody home.
Great, thank you. So all right, so let's maybe I'll start with Steve. Well, actually, forget Steve because everything went according to plan for you. Adam, what went according to plan?
What went according to plan?
I'll ask you two questions at the same time. What went according to plan and what didn't?
Yeah. So we did a really good job getting the leadership team and the tech team together to provision enough machines and get enough hardware to get everybody home and set up with quality. So I'll say it was a grind, a lot of hours going chaotic, and I personally sat in the boardroom assembling computers for everybody and dropping them into boxes to get moved home. And that went to plan. It went pretty well. It was clunky, but it went well. What didn't go to plan is none of the cell phone companies or the internet providers in all of our teams' hometowns were ready for the onslaught of everybody working from home. So although the server and the internet at the office was really good, them being able to get up and down from their house didn't work brilliantly. And the one other thing to try and stay connected to the team, I started doing morning daily addresses first via video. And if you send 60 people a 5-minute video update on the business, you will crash your server and all the internet you have. That was a learning curve. We switched to audio pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right, Jeff. What did you crash anybody's home ISP, or what went according to plan? What didn't through
No,
your?
we were able to get everybody hooked up. Now we did have a few challenges. We didn't have enough VPN licenses, and I think the biggest thing is having to set up security because the number of cyber attacks increased greatly during COVID, and we realized that we have to make sure everybody's systems at home. And we had a number of staff using home systems, and the ones at home had a VPN, but we'd never thought about putting virus checking on their software. So we had to install 25 versions of our virus checking software remotely. We had to get VPNs. So once we got people home, and some people took their system out of the office, some people used their own system, that seemed to work very well, and everybody worked great. Like Steve, our phone systems didn't handle it very well. We struggled. We didn't have the ability to, we had an old system that had software, so we could buy a software program. We had 3 soft licenses, and I tried to buy 8 more licenses and realized that our nice Toshiba phone over here was sold to another company and they didn't make them anymore. So I actually went on a witch hunt, and I actually found the guy that used to work at the company, at the new company, after making 3 calls. After my phone provider said they couldn't get them, 2 hours later, I had 8 software licenses offered to my provider and got it done, and it worked and got us through. But that did not work so well, the phone thing. We had not been using Microsoft Teams at all, and we've looked at Slack, and we were using it for a marketing team, so we were slow to deploy that, and we're just starting to do that right now. But we could have communicated a little bit better. Our managers communicated with each team regularly, so they were doing it, and I didn't do it quite as much as Adam doing a video every day or anything. But we did have a lot of people still working in the building. Like, we had people that never left the building during COVID. We did follow all the proper protocols in-house. Just getting supplies was a bit of a challenge, but we were able to do it. And I think everybody's kind of holy shit moment was when all of a sudden insurance became maybe not an essential service, and we didn't know. And if we had to put everybody home and we didn't have extra 3 or 4 days to make everybody set up, I think we would have had a bit of a struggle for 2 days. But that was some kind of wins, losses, and lessons.
Awesome. Okay, so actually, I'm going to go to the next question here now. So, maybe Steve, I'll start with you here. So, how does your staff react? Now, that might be a quick answer for you, seeing as you really didn't make that many changes. But interested in knowing how your staff react, and maybe talk a little bit about how WCL Bald staff react as well.
As you said, cheap. There were no issues. The staff, there was no reaction to have. With our traditional shop, the staff were really good. In fact, we got a lot of feedback that they were quite appreciative as to how fast we respond to getting them working from home, because I think that they saw a lot of their neighbors and stuff being laid off and so on. So they were really appreciative at the time to still have work, given everything that was going on. We too had to go through the process of buying hardware and buying computers and just getting what people needed hardware-wise at home. So the reaction overall was well. I think that the biggest struggle, though, was shortly after. Some people aren't equipped to work at home. The ones that have the biggest struggle, obviously, are those that were, they used to have 3 screens at the office, and now they're on a laptop with a cell phone with a toddler at their feet. That is really difficult.
Yeah. I can imagine. Adam, maybe you can add your viewpoint to that. How did your teams react after you, especially after you video bombed them and dropped everybody's internet connection?
Yeah. So I'll make up some numbers that sort of convey the sentiment. So we probably had 60% that verbally or wrote out like Steve and said, "Hey, thanks a lot for taking this seriously and acting so fast." I think we were well ahead of the curves. We were on the list of able to stay open, but you probably had another 30% that didn't say anything, didn't do anything. They went along with it. And you had 10% that really would have rather stayed in the office. Like, this was a pain. I don't want to go home. I got a lot of questions from those ones of like, "Hey, is this optional? Can I stay here? Can I do something?" And our leadership team took a bit of a hard line and said, "No, we're taking this as seriously as it can be, and we're sending it all home, and that's how we're going to operate." And I kept myself out of the office and our leadership out of the office the same way. So technically it all went really well. We hit really good numbers, hit really good sales, stayed on top of it. Like, from a business metric standpoint, it was great. Now a bunch of days in, I think it's weighing a bit on mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Everyone's going a little bit stir crazy, no doubt. Actually, Jeff, maybe give us a quick soundbite on your staff reaction, then we'll move on to how the customer's perspective.
Yeah, I'd say ditto the other people. The staff was very appreciative that we shut the doors as soon as we could. As soon as Trudeau went in the air, we made a decision to shut the doors that day to the public. So that was good. So that was a big win early on, but some of the staff wished we had communicated more. So some didn't want to be communicated with too much. Others wanted more communication. So we probably should have erred on the side of communicating more frequently, improved our cadence early on. There wasn't some days a lot of changes, but I think it was still important that we still reached out and communicated, so that could have been better. But once we got together with everybody, we talked about our power of 3. Number 1, keep the staff safe. That was number 1. Number 2, make sure we gave outstanding service to our clients. And number 3, help the community out and make sure that we give back and help businesses and different things affected any way we could. So that was kind of the thing we followed throughout the whole pandemic. We did send a thank you card about a month and a half in with a $100 Visa to all our staff members saying, "Thanks for everything you did. We want to make sure your family's safe. You're going through tough times." So we wanted to acknowledge them, and we just gave them a $500 cash bonus about a week ago. Again, thanking them for everything they did, because they're going through a tough time. We were able to not lay everybody off, and I'll be honest, when we started modeling things with the Bain study, we weren't sure if we're going to have a 10, 20, 30% hit. So we had to make sure that we had money in the bank. We're financially stable to absorb anything. So it was pretty stressful for the management just to look at what could happen, but we had to make sure we're always a step ahead. So that was important. And we wanted to make sure that we always were looking out for the staff. So that's kind of how we handled it. And, I was very impressed with how our team did everything. So.
Okay. So actually, Jeff, I'm going to stay with you, and I'm going to ask you a double question here. So give me some feedback. So we talked to the staff. It sounds like for the most part, everything went really well and people were appreciative, which is fantastic. So talk to me about how your customers reacted, and both from a sort of anecdotal human perspective, but also from a numbers perspective. So, we've all heard customers have been taking cars off the road, reducing coverage, what have you. So maybe give us a sense of what impact that's had on you, both from a numbers perspective and sort of from the human feedback perspective from your customers.
Yeah, I think the customers were outstanding. Like, they were very sympathetic and they understood the situation. They were grateful that we could just continue on. Like, we were, some people were physically in the office, some people were remote, and they did understand that, if we had to take a little bit of time to get back to them, they were totally appreciative of that. So I think I was very impressed with how the customers were for us. We did struggle a bit with the company communication when the companies came out and the messages were all over the map. Our team had trouble was when the company would announce something before we heard what they were doing. And we fielded a lot of calls that I think the industry could have handled better. And again, there's no roadmap for the industry. This is a black swan event. So really easy to look back and say, hey, you should have done this, should have done that. But we had, a bit of a challenge there, but we try to be proactive. We sent out 4 emails to our clients, communicated with regular frequency. We put it on social media. We built a COVID page, all those type of things. And in terms of numbers, to jump into your question, we saw, probably 180% increase in negative endorsements on our numbers year over year. So we had a lot of coverages coming off. We had about 6,500 clients. I think we saw approximately 800 to 1,000 people call in on their policy. So our staff were flooded with questions, and we're still doing our day job and adjusting to the new norm. So that's kind of what we saw, people that called in, and we reached out to people multiple times to say, hey, call us to go over that. We can't call every single client, but we want you to know that you can take coverages off. We're here to help you. Same with the business owners. We try to be as responsive as we could. So that's kind of the metrics. I don't know if we're going to get in later about, top line, bottom line effects, but those are some metrics I think that are important that we saw.
Yeah, well, maybe you can just quickly talk about the impact here. So, Q2 is almost in the books. Where, are you up, down, sideways from Q2 last year?
We're up. We're off plan. Like we're currently trending at 7 to 8% growth. Our plan was 10, and our stretch goal was 15. Our big problem is our leads have not slowed down. We've been able to go full bore, but we're down. We're missing. We needed to hire 2 people, and hiring people during COVID with our traditional linear hiring process and onboarding has been challenging. So we're having to figure that out. So overall, not quite as good as probably Adam and Steve have done, but at least it hasn't gone negative yet. And again, there's going to be 12 months of this feeding through the system, and there's going to be a lot of changes and stops and starts. So there's a lot of things that could change in 5 seconds. So I'm not sure. It's not bad so far, but I think we're in for a lot more pain over the long haul.
Yeah. Well, we'll hear what Steve and Adam have to say momentarily. I have a hypothesis. My view is that the total pie of insurance premium has actually shrunk a little bit as people take cars off the road, as businesses reduce their revenues or shut down entirely. So the pie that used to exist is a bit smaller. And I'm really interested to see, is it digital brokers, traditional brokers, direct writers, agents? I'm really interested to see who's actually winning in that world. So we're hearing you're up. So there's obviously the 3 of you are digitally oriented brokers. So I'm just interested to see what Adam and Steve have to say, and maybe Steve will flip it over to you. So give us a sense, how did your customers react, and how has this impacted your top line results?
Customer reaction at the digital shop was about the same as the staff. Business as usual. We communicate with them regularly. We do a lot of self-service digitally. With respect to top line at the digital shop, they grew exponentially. Their opportunity for the number of quotes and leads coming in grew substantially, and they were able to take advantage of that right away. I think particularly because some of the competition were, like our traditional shop, were sort of scrambling, even with their sales staff at the time. So great there. The biggest concern I think I had at the time was retention. With retention being poor anyway, I thought, oh boy, like all these people losing jobs, the first thing that's going to do, like the number of NSFs is just going to skyrocket in cancellations for non-payment. But strangely, and really happy about this, that didn't really happen. Our retention actually increased, which is, I don't know, it's really strange. We'll see what comes in the next month or so. Part of that might have had to do with sort of the payment allowances that companies were making. So did it delay the inevitable? I'm still waiting to see that. And I thought I'd have a tsunami of cancellations for non-payment by now, but I haven't seen that happen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, that non-pay cancellation is still a potential dark cloud looming, but we'll see what happens. So, I mean, so far, in fact, it sounds like it's actually positive news from the perspective of Cheap, which is great. And maybe Adam, you want to give us your perspective on customer reaction anecdotally and on sales.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with you. My general sentiment is it feels like the pie is shrinking a little bit. Everybody's taking a little bit less buying. Steve, we had our record ever in sort of history, 2 months of retention for it would have been April and May. So I guess to answer the quickly on how do customers do, I found their sentiment was incredibly understanding and everybody bound together, and they were really grateful and thankful we were here and able to do something. And they gave us a lot of leeway in being, maybe slower to get back to them or some other things, but zero complaints. Now that we're into the full swing of things and people are kind of getting back to unlocked and out in the world and things, you can see much more demanding and, much more on top of it, and the swell of demand is really big right now. So it's as if somebody put their thumb on the hose for a little bit. And if you look at the Google Trends traffic, you can go for car insurance and watch it just get cut in half and plummet in March, when everybody was sort of scared for life and dealing with all other priorities than trying to save on car insurance and that general insurance shopping. But then it came back with a fury, and so through April, May, and June, it climbed up, and now we're at all-time highs. So on a year-over-year number, we just have a really big marketing engine, a really big sales team. So we're up 32% year-over-year in PIF count. I think that would have happened with or without the pandemic. So I don't think that was because of. I think it's just coincidental timing that we had been growing and working towards this. Yeah. So on a business metric standpoint, we're selling and renewing and doing things really well. I think I'm also waiting for people's cash to run out into July and August and things, and where the non-payments and really tough choices might happen. God help us if we get a second wave of this and what it's going to do to restaurants and the average small business. I think that'll have a big trickle down.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, interesting to see, going back to my pie hypothesis, that all three of you, to varying degrees, have experienced an increase. When the pie is shrinking, and you guys are still increasing or having good to great increases, you're obviously outperforming, which is, kudos to you guys. And I suspect that's because you were not intentionally ready for the pandemic, but just the business model you've chosen is quite suited to digitization, obviously, which the pandemic has forced. That's great. So let me move to the silver lining side of these questions here. So once the pandemic is lifted, what things do you take away from the work you've done? So you've done a ton of work moving people remotely. You probably invested more in digital. What do you keep going forward once that pandemic is lifted and once people can go back to whatever normal is in the future? And maybe Adam, why don't you go first?
Sure. So what do you keep? I'll just pick one. I think we keep the option to work remotely wherever you are in the world as an option on the table. I think that stays full time. I think we moved a lot of great efforts, including into a big build out of a big office, and had a bunch of overhead there to run one team, one culture. And I think it'll be challenging in the future with a decentralized team to have the same sort of culture. But as people find their homework balance, you can give people their whole commute back, a lot of quality of life. We can, spread around the cost of what the overhead of the office keeps us. So this is a giant experiment we never would have had the courage to try without COVID. Like, we couldn't have convinced the leadership team, said, hey, we're going to try for 90 days. We're going to try sending everyone in the company home. Like, that never would have flown. We never would have thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. When having lived and worked in Toronto a few times in my life, getting my commute back is huge, right? That can be a couple hours a day for some people. So no, that's great. All right, Jeff, I'm going to come over to you. So, you're obviously based in a smaller part of the world than Adam is. What do you keep after things could theoretically go back to normal?
I think just like one of the things Adam mentioned is we're going to have a work from home policy. We've had people working from home a little bit here and there, but we've never actually formalized it. So I think it's forced us to look at it and actually write a policy out, be a lot more adaptable, like give people a little more flexibility than we had before. I still feel that there's some value in coming into the mothership or one of the offices and being around people and seeing people, reading body language. You might call it osmosis, right? It's by learning by being around people that you can see the body language through Zoom, but it's not the same. So I still think there's an importance of having people come into the building on a regular interval, whatever that is. But we're going to keep, learning and measuring and giving people some flexibility, probably a little bit more so. So I think that's going to stay. And obviously phone system, like we're going to crew.io. I know Steve's working on that. Also, we've identified that our phone system wasn't good enough, which I knew. And I was looking for kind of the ultimate phone system that can do everything I want. And it's done that. So we're implementing that. And we are looking at putting in, a team viewer like Microsoft Teams seems to be a really good one that we like. We're looking at probably rolling that in, and we didn't really have that. So making a shift more towards that area. And probably the last thing is we're looking at how do we onboard people virtually. We're building out new training so we can deliver it virtually. We didn't have that. So I think it's really accelerated us to do things we wouldn't have done. And it's identified gaps. I think the one good thing about COVID is identified any stress point in your business. And it's forced us to move a lot faster in days and weeks instead of years. And it's been a good thing for the industry in a sense, in that way.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, and Steve, I'm going to give you the last word for this episode. I'm going to change up the question just slightly because I'm going to presuppose that your answer with respect to cheap was, well, we didn't change, so we're going to keep everything the same. So I'm going to change your question a little bit. What practices do you think you will essentially export from cheap over to your traditional shop?
We actually leveraged Cheap quite a bit and the expertise over there. So we quickly brought operations expertise and communication expertise over to teach the traditional shop what to do and do it quickly. We had to modify our broker portal. It's no secret that we have a couple of insurers really pushing for paperless. How are we going to handle that when Cheap's already paperless? So they really helped to educate us. I think for the traditional shop, the things that we'll keep are like the other two guys, some element of work from home. We'll maintain that. What does that look like? I'm not sure. Interestingly, the number of applicants at Cheap for, we didn't even have a role posted, has really increased because what we're seeing is people from from competitors who've gone home to work, who've now figured out that they don't want to go back. So they're not looking forward to whatever their employer's return to work is, and they know that Cheap is entirely a virtual brokerage. So I find that kind of interesting. But what we'll keep at the traditional shop was, the mother's necessity is the mother of all invention. There are some systems, workflows that we put into place. The level of communication, how we do it quickly, and those are the sort of things that we really had to step up our game quickly on and sort of digitize. We'll keep those for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. And I'm going to close out the episode by congratulating all three of you guys on absolutely crushing it through COVID. As fantastic examples. I've heard a lot of stories of things that haven't gone well, and all three of you guys have come through supporting your staff, supporting your clients, and benefiting, being ready to and actually executing on some financial benefits there. So well done, guys. Congratulations.